I said last year, there's some meat left on the bone in between good and better. There should be an option in between there that people can step up to without having to step up thousands of dollars. That should be there anyway. And so once I started to understand the premise of 6 options, it's like, that's right. But why wouldn't they have 2 at the top, 2 at the middle, and 2 at the bottom? And that was just like, oh my God.
Hello, 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 and welcome back to yet another episode of Electricpreneur Secrets, the Electricians podcast. And we're on episode 225, and this is no slouch. We're hitting sales records by doing what's right with our client, Alan. And we've got a huge story for you to connect with, get inspired by, and help rise the tide for electricpreneurs everywhere. I'm your host, Clay Newmeyer. With me, as always, my esteemed co-host, Joseph Lucani, and we're the Electricpreneurs. Couple of master electricians with business addictions here and ready to serve. The entrance fee, the admission fee for this is simple. Sit back in the hot seat, listen to everything we have to give, and promise to take action and report your wins back to us. Not my best intro, Joe, but I'm going with it, man. We've got a huge interview today, brother. How you doing today?
Full steam ahead, man. Full steam ahead. I'm feeling really, really good. We've had some good laughs today. As always, I love working with you. We had an awesome class this morning. I'm fired up about that. And we're talking to our friend, Alan. I mean, I like talking to the guy in general. Why not here too, right?
Absolutely. You know what? I was thinking of this banner, but as you reminded me, Alan is a stud, and we're going to give him the goats. There they are.
There we go. Amen to that.
If you're watching this live with us on the Facebook live stream, we're here 5 days a week to help you master sales, simplify pricing, and deliver premium level service. And Alan's going to help us with that today. So why don't we bring him in, Joe, and talk through Alan's story a little bit?
Can't wait. Let's make it happen.
All right. Alan, brother, how are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Fantastic.
Doing good.
Feels like Groundhog Day here. We're trying to get this right. We've tried a couple iterations in the background. We got it right this time. I am pumped up to hear your story, man, as so many other people are. Tell us why electrical. Why'd you get into this? Why is it important to you? That was like 3 huge questions in one, but I know you got this, brother.
Yeah. So, man, I kind of really didn't have a choice in the matter, so to speak. My dad was an electrical contractor, and so I kind of grew up in the trades. Essentially, he owned an electrical / HVAC company, and so growing up in the summers and on the weekends and things of that nature, I was always helping them wire houses, run ductwork, build plenums. We were kind of old school, and so I just kind of grew up around it, and it was never something that I wanted to do, honestly. Like, I did not want to be an electrician. If I could have picked either one of the two, I would have been an HVAC tech, but I really didn't want to do either. But my dad, what I wanted to do was what every teenager wanted to do, which was go hang out with their friends and chase girls and things of that nature. But my dad insisted that I put forth some time and some effort and some energy into learning a trade. That way I would always have something to fall back on. And so that's just kind of how it started, man. I just was born into it.
On it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was going to call him on that because think about it. When we started off, think about that's 90s parents mentality where it's like, you should have a trade to fall back on. And now us in 2023, where kids are like, you got to get into the trades. They are the only stable thing to be in. Yeah. So your fallback ended up being the most solid foundation you could have ever built yourself on.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Looking back on it, it's just one of those things where I just, in the moment, and I didn't really understand how blessed I was. And it's taken some time for everything to come to fruition for me to look back on it and be like, man, thank you, Dad.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that share. And I feel like so many people were kind of given the gift of, if you call it a gift, their dad or someone trying to pressure them and just be like, take the family business, just do the family thing. I'll make this easy for you. And as a teenager or young adolescent, you're just like, hey, I want nothing of that. I want nothing. Leave me alone. I want to do my own way, find my own way.
Yeah. And I did, man. And that's kind of how it unfolded is, I don't know if anyone else has ever worked with family, but in high school, it was a little bit different because it wasn't a job. It wasn't a career. It was just something that I was casually learning to make some extra money. There wasn't a lot of pressure to it. And when I got out of high school, working with my dad, like I would be lying if I said that wasn't the kind of the opposite. Like I'm very, very strong willed, and so was he. And so we kind of, to a degree, butted heads a little bit. And there kind of came a point in time where the discussion happened about, maybe I should go to some other companies and see how they operate and kind of do that. And so that's where, the foundation was laid with him. And I went to some other places and gained some knowledge there, and ended up coming back there. And so it was a very perfectly imperfect journey.
Perfectly imperfect. All right.
Good.
That's a good way of saying it.
Nice pickup.
Sure.
I'm wondering, why go into business for yourself then? Did you always see this coming? Or was there something that happened that was just like, you know what, I got to do this on my own? What caused this?
That's a good question, Clay. Man, the truth is, man, that my intention was to go back and run my dad's business. That was always my intentions, because that's what supported my mother and things of that nature. And that was that's what was supposed to happen in my mind. That's how the story was supposed to unfold going forward. And in 2016, we lost him. He was in an accident at work in his work van, and we lost my dad in 2016. And I was in no place to be running a small business then. And I'd always struggled with addiction issues growing up, something that I'd kind of battled my entire life, so to speak. And then when that happened in 2016, and all the guilt and all the shame of not only the time that I had missed with my dad, but also the fact that I wasn't going to be able to carry on that portion of his legacy, just drove the addiction to a place where, I went places and did things that I said that I would never do ultimately. And then in November of 2017, I got clean. And when I went to my first job, just as a kind of a starting point of reference, I showed up to my first job with a flat blade screwdriver and one pair of dikes. That's all I had to my name, man. And the guy that was there was like, "Why do you have a journeyman's license and only this?" Like something about this story isn't quite adding up. And I was just honest with the guy, man. For the first time in my life, I was honest about where I was at and my situation in life, and the fact that I was willing to work, but I needed some help. And he worked with me, man, and it just kind of got me on my path. And I think at about 3 years clean, I kind of worked my way up there to a point to where it was like, I'm waiting on a project manager to retire, and they ain't going anywhere. They weren't like old guys. They're early 50s. They're not going anywhere. They're firmly planted in their seats, and decided that, man, why not? You know what I mean? Why not? And so that's really what it did, man, is to be honest, I just got bored at the other place that I was at, and just not because I needed the money, not because anything else, just like, I want to try this new thing. I want to try this challenge. And so,
yeah. Wow, man, that's a huge vulnerable share, and I appreciate you going there with us, man. I know that's tough times and tough things that you've had to work through. There's something that I do want people to take away from this, ahead of any talk about revenue or money or business growth what's really important here is, I know for a fact that, we've had to work around in schedules of working with you to always make room for, there's a weekly visit, is that right, where you go and speak to other people that are having hard times and help them through these challenges as well?
Yeah, so that's, one of the things is that in November of 2017, there were people who, I met a group of people that were just like me, had struggled the way that I had struggled, and been to a lot of the same places and stuff. And I think that the thing that was different about that point in time in my life versus every other treatment center or rehabilitation center or counselor or doctor or judge or lawyer or probation officer that stood in front of me was, finally, for the first time in my life, there was someone across from me who had the experience. In other words, empathy could take place. And so having that experience, fast forward to today and over the past 6 years, is I never wanted to forget that. And I always wanted to like express my gratitude by going back every Thursday to one of the local treatment centers here and just sharing with those guys that like, hey, I understand. I've been there too. And you know what I mean? There's a way out.
Totally, man. Yeah, I appreciate that. I know I have a similar thing. Joe's got a similar thing he'll speak to. I just wanted to say quick, I think the three of us bonded really well because we all share.
Yeah.
It seems like on one fork in the road that we always hold in our mind, there's a burning dumpster fire down one end. And maybe that's what's helped driving us down to the right path always, right? Joe, go ahead, brother.
Yeah. I was going to say one thing that I've always respected about you, Alan, was those of us, like, you know, my past and everything like that, but the fact that those of us with a darker past or a more muddled past, I feel we're actually put in those situations for a good reason. Because if you think about it, all the people that you're talking to on the other side of the table may not ever believe that what you have is possible for them. And if anyone else told your story who hadn't gone through it, I know I wouldn't have believed it. Like when I was going through what I had to go through, I needed someone who was in my seat to say, yeah, this happened and this is how I overcame it. So if anything, I think you're blessing other people by saying, you know what, I've been there and this is what's possible on the other side. And I'm not judging you for what you've gone through. I think that's really changing lives in a big way. And I want you to know personally, like from the bottom of my heart, it means so much to me that you do that. And I'm sorry if I've not given you enough credit for it, but I wanted to publicly just say that I have an immense amount of respect for someone who's able to say, you know what, my scars are now the shield that protects others.
I appreciate that, Joseph. It means a lot to hear that.
Well said.
You're welcome.
All right, into the business stuff. Again, thank you for sharing that. You're going on 3 years, I believe, in your business, right? Would you just tell us kind of how did first year, second year, and now third year, how is that going in just a quick snapshot?
You know, first year was chucking a truck, man. I didn't know any better. I didn't know anything about home services. I had no idea. I had the really what I think is kind of the old school mentality about residential electrical work is you're either wiring a new house or you're going in and you're replacing an outlet and there's not much money in it. I better go to some commercial where there's some money. And so the first year in the truck was just taking whatever I could get, man. You know, I mean, it was just like survival. You know, I mean, we've all started businesses, and there's like, you talk about your back being against the wall, it's like there's no paycheck on Friday unless you go make it. You better go make it. And that's what I did, man. And that was like, I'm so grateful for that time because it was hard, man. It was a struggle. Like I had to like dig deep and like find ways to make things happen that I didn't know. It's like, I call it follow the bouncing ball, you know, figuring out how to pull a permit for the first time, you know, just stuff like that. And then in March of the following year, March of last year, really January, February of last, I started hearing about home services. I started hearing about this philosophy of residential service and things of that nature. And I started listening to some podcasts, and around the end of February, March of last year, I think that the biggest turning point in the business at all was I took a hard line in the sand of we are a residential service company only. I mean, to the point where people would call and want us to do commercial, and I would respectfully decline. And that's all we did was residential service. And then I started learning about options, and we were given half as many options as should be given, 3 instead of 6. But it was something, you know, I mean, it was something, man. And I just happened to make some really, really, really key hires, guys that are still with me today. And we just went, man. It just happens, you know, just the right place at the right time. And I feel like I didn't waste a whole lot of time we found our niche, man, and we made a commitment to that niche. And last year, by the end of the year, we ran 1.23 million out of my garage. So it was, that's the good thing. Yeah. You can imagine the chaos that it was. I mean, it was hard. It was hard on me. It was hard on the guys. There were far more that didn't make it to the end of the year than did make it to the end of the year. And that's kind of one of the things that I knew that was lacking going into this year was like this philosophy once again of culture. and what that is, and what is our culture, what is our identity, who are we, what do we do, things of that nature. And that is, as well as wanting to have like some sort of sales process so we can train people. Like, I don't want to be the one to have to always do it or depend on the couple of guys within the business. Like, how can we train people to serve at a high level that will result in enough revenue for us to keep the doors open and everybody be happy? And that's when we got with you guys.
I love that. And I'm hearing a couple of things, Joe. I'm sure you picked out a couple of things there, but you mentioned 2 or 3 big things that were massive shifts, but it was mostly about niching down, like deciding, hey, I'm going to work in service and do nothing else. And I want to really explore that a bit more with you, because that niching is so important. And it's not just for electricians. Like, we see this in almost every industry where people really get distracted by every big number that comes their way. And next thing you know, for some reason, right, that generalist mentality, there's just more month at the end of the money than money at the end of the month. But interesting enough, that was a very personal decision to focus on the niche. But then you said, well, culture was the next big shift that you were looking for. So a couple of your biggest mentality shifts and biggest breakthroughs in your business weren't even necessarily about a sales process yet, or the offer training, or any of the stuff that we talk about often, but just the personal side of it. And I think that's so impactful, and I really wanted to call attention to that. Do you think, here's the hard question, you'd be where you are today if you did not focus on the service?
No.
I mean, in a sense of revenue, like growth and size.
No. I mean, here's the thing. I think that I was fortunate enough to do it before we had a commercial side of the business even going. So there was no revenue drop before we got back up to strictly running residential service. It was just a decision that was made without a loss of revenue at all. I say that to say that the numbers speak for themselves. I mean, it's not that I never did commercial work or that I didn't study the numbers, commercial against residential. I mean, to be honest, the whole reason that I did that niche is because I knew that the margins were higher. I knew that there was no accounts receivable. I knew that the customers were grateful. I knew that they were going to call us back. They were going to refer me to other people. They weren't just going to want to hold me down to themselves. So no, I don't think that.
You know, I just want to say, and I don't know if I'm stretching it here, but it almost seems like it's a gift that your father is giving you, even when he's not around. Because you think about all the years you spent in there, like all the years you spent wiring houses and doing it and working with your old man. And those lessons helped you shape this business, even though originally you're like, I never want to go there. But lo and behold, here we are. And you have all those memories of your father guiding your business. Like, isn't that like a beautiful thing? Like, when you look at it that way and you're like, the thing that I thought I was running from was actually the biggest blessing that I didn't realize I had.
Yeah, every day, man. I mean, I don't just say that lightly. You know, that's a realization that gets deeper and deeper as time goes on, how much of a blessing that period of time in my life was. Yeah, man, all the time. Yeah, I know. Like, I've heard a lot of people say, like, that have had, deceased relatives, I hope that they're proud of me. It's like, no, man, like, I know my dad is proud of me. There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah. Well, if nothing else, I'm proud of you.
Because of him.
Yeah. There was another piece there that I really wanted to drill down a bit. And I know that it wasn't even us at this time, but you mentioned like listening some podcasts and that being a bit of a breakthrough for you. Yeah. How big was that really for you? I know we've chatted about this before, and it seemed like there was a mega mentality shift that kind of led to that second year being over $1 million.
Yeah. I believe what you put in is what you're going to get out. I've always believed that. And so I became obsessed, man. I truly became obsessed. And I don't know how specific you want me to get with which podcast or what, but
feel free to mention any podcast.
Yeah. I mean, the first one was Waste No Day. I believe there's an episode on there that attracted my attention. It was running a service call like a $3 million electrician. And there's not a whole lot of similarities between me and that guy, but just that possibility was like, what? what? Like, I would hope to get there as a business, and this guy's doing it in residential service. It was like, I need to learn more about this. Like, where can I get information about this? For sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, thanks for sharing that. I mean, as you know, we're friends with the Waste No Day guys too. And
Yeah,
I had an
yeah.
episode on there, and I know they've helped a ton of people, and they're absolutely blowing up. So honorable
Good
mention
people.
to them. Another thing that happened in the background in another episode we did with Dan Antonelli. Now, you are branded by Kickcharge as well. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
And did that have, like, did you notice a considerable growth impact from that rebranding, both internally and with clients?
Yeah, it's funny that you mention it internally and externally with clients, because I mean, the first thing was like this, like, aura of pride all of a sudden that was within the facility and within the group of guys that just wasn't there before. Everybody, all of a sudden we had wrapped bands and our uniforms, and we got our badges, and it went like thing that could be something to, like, all of a sudden it feels like we're something, it looks like we're something, we were a step closer.
We're something.
And then we're something all of a sudden, and I think that the why behind that, though, was because what happened is how we got the name What's Right, and the tagline is, in darkness and light, we do what's right. Now, I didn't think of that, but what happened is through numerous interviews similar to this one with Dan and his team, they were the ones who came up with that because of the story and the premise of, we built the company from day one on the premise of do the right thing for the right reason with the core value of integrity, which is doing the right thing even when no one's watching. And so that reflected our name, and it was just kind of like a battle cry all of a sudden, where, like, and kind of a joke within the business as far as, like, guys would have questions, and I'm like, what's the right thing to do?
I love that.
Just like play on words. And then all of a sudden, man, we, people were like, we've seen your van. We see you all over town. I'm like, yeah, we were all over town with the same number of vehicles last year. It just looks different. It's more catchy. And we started getting calls from neighbors. This is before we even really started running the Good Neighbor program. We started getting calls from neighbors that were seeing us in the neighborhood, and people just calling off of the van wraps. And yeah, man, a tremendous internal and external influence that provided.
I love that. Okay, well, let's fast forward to today then, and a bit more of kind of this becoming of our relationship. Now, I know that when we met, that was back earlier in 2023, first quarter. I think we started working together at the end of March. And from my memory, what it serves me is you were just really looking for more like sales consistency and something to kind of pave this pathway to make sure that you had a trainable, consistent process so that you could also have more culture control. I think that was really a huge focus for you. But now, even down in the nitty-gritty details, I'm sure people are waiting for. You told me on our first call that you would die on the hill of 3 options. And at our 90-day review, you said that you would die on the hill of 6 options. Can you help us understand that change? What happened there to cause that for you?
So what caused the change essentially was a lot of resistance at first. And I didn't even know why the resistance was there. I didn't understand, all it was like, there's this old saying that it's not the change, it's the resistance to the change that's hard. And I think that for me, when I started looking at it, for me, this is just for me, and this is not say our way versus that's not what I'm saying. I'm just giving my experience here, which was that I did 3 options, and then slowly but surely I started to open my mind, not to 6, but to the possibility that maybe there could be more than 3, which led to 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. And so before long, I had to tone it back down to 6. So 6 just kind of fell into place. And what I mean by that is, I don't know how granular you want me to go with this, but just from a logical standpoint, I said last year, there's some meat left on the bone in between good and better. There should be an option in between there that people can step up to without having to step up thousands of dollars. That should be there anyway. And so once I started to understand the premise of 6 options, it's like, that's right. But why wouldn't they have 2 at the top, 2 at the middle, and 2 at the bottom? And that was just like, oh my God, I don't make sense, you know? And so, and I think that's where, for me, you know, I think that there are certainly situations where only giving 3, in my opinion, would be a little bit unethical. I think they should, if we're going to give options and we're going to give them a menu of choices, you know, I'll stand on the hill and die on it of 6, but at least there should at least be some option in between the bare minimum and thousands of dollars in the middle. And I think that's wrong to not give people, not at least like use our professionalism and our expertise and our training to give them an option that makes them to where they can enjoy their home more and it's more safe without spending all of that money unless they want to, you know? And that's where, like, for me, it was like, dang, man, like that was it, Clay. I don't know if that answers your question, but
no, it was a great answer. Joe, go ahead, man.
I was going to say, it really sounds like you're doubling down to doing what's right here. Because you know, like you know where I stand when it comes to 6 options, man. Like I'm also dying on that hill, and I know you and I had to go back and forth a couple of times on why and how and everything. But you know what? You're right. When you focused on the integrity behind it, like everyone can say good, better, best, but you simply saying, you know what, there should be some stepping stone between, you know what, we're going to just do a restoration of your panel and we're going to gut the whole thing. There's got to be something in between there. And I'm glad that you could grasp that and really just, you know, put it into your own belief value.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
definitely.
Man, I agree.
There was one more kind of thing I wanted to pick on you a little bit, brother. I hope you don't mind, but we had this moment where you had said to me, you know, Clay, in the beginning on that first call, you told me that I might have an attachment to my sales process, an emotional attachment that might be difficult to overcome. And at the time you had said, but I didn't even think I had a sales process to be attached to. But later on in that 90-day review, sort of the same situation, there was kind of this aha moment that we had together where you shared, okay, no, I was, and that was a real challenge actually to overcome. Do you kind of have some words for this and maybe helping others to embrace that change and the resistance to the change that you mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, just to kind of touch on what you said, I mean, I think if you do something for a period of time, whether you know what you're doing or not know what you're doing, especially when you're a selling technician and you go into a home, you may not realize that you're doing these certain things throughout the call, but after doing them for a period of time, that is repetition. They're pretty similar. It's a series of steps. The goal is the same, and it's a sales process of some sort. I just didn't realize what it was or anything, and there was no troubleshooting it of any kind. And I think I was just very ignorant to the fact that I was emotionally attached to the way that I had done it for the year prior. And I think that moving more in towards a process, I mean, it was a hard shift, man. It is a hard shift, but for me, it's been incremental. Like I had this belief. So I started off with you guys not thinking that I had a process and that we were just going to modify what I was already doing a little bit. Like I'm already doing pretty good. And then it was like, well, if you're going to do it this way, these are some non-negotiables. These are some of the things that you're going to have to do. And so my idea of what was going to happen completely transformed. And that was a lot of change. So there was a lot of resistance to that. And just like anything else, the one thing that I haven't done, thanks to you guys, was quit. Like I never quit. I got mad. I got sad. I got cried. I screamed. Every emotion that there was to feel, I felt them all. But on the other side of that, it was like, why not just try the one thing? What if you just tried the one? What if you just changed this one little thing? Well, that worked. What about this other little thing and this other little thing and this other little thing? And that's what started it. And I'm more of the type that like, I'm not going to tell you something that I think that something works just to toot your own horn. Like I'm going to get my experience. And if I think it works, then I will do it. And that is what I will share and nothing else. And I say that to say that through those incremental shifts, that is what's got me to a point to where like, I believe in this process. because it's worked. Because it's worked. That's it.
Awesome.
Just because it worked.
Really good feedback there.
And I'm still learning. I have by no means I don't think that I have it mastered. I think that I've come a long way, and I've still got a longer ways to go. That's what I think.
Well, as long as you're walking that journey, man, I'm really excited to be walking it with you. You've really just been a pleasure to have as a student. I know that you and I, we have our bouts every now and then, but at the end of the day, there isn't anyone that I'd rather want to be working with, because I know that once you commit to something, there is nothing on this good green earth that's going to pull you off the path of it. If you believe that there's something, you go for it, and your teeth are out every time.
I appreciate that, bro.
You're welcome, huge growth. But Alan, I got to get your cheeks a bit rosy here. You currently hold 2 of our program records, both involving sales. So biggest month at just under $183,000 from your van, and biggest week at just over $97,000 from your van. And now, honestly, we kind of alluded to this in the marketing bit and a bit earlier in the conversation. You're almost at $900,000 in sales for the year from your van. And being that you started in April, I've done the math and run it back. If we went April to April rather, and continue at this trend, you may even beat Joseph's 1.3 million record. Not to jinx it, brother. I'm at a wood desk and I am knocking. I don't want to do that to you. Anyone superstitious with us today? But man, there's got to be a few a few things that have really amounted to this for you. Would you just share your top 3? What's helped you achieve this?
Yeah, I mean, the first one was having a sales process, like not written out necessarily, but like a guideline as far as how to run a residential service call. And the benefit to that was we could see where things were going wrong, and we could correct it where it was going wrong. In other words, before, without having any guidelines, it was either you got the sale or you didn't get the sale. What went wrong? Just the wrong kind of call, wrong kind of person, whatever excuse it was that I could come up with, or whoever could come up with, and having a sales process to be like, no, this went well, this went well, this went well, this went well, right here, something was off. And being able to trace back to that and be like, okay, maybe this, maybe that. So that just having a sales process that enabled us to troubleshoot where it's going wrong, what the deal is, so on and so forth. The second biggest one was generators. So we had never, I'd installed some generators, but I had What's Right Electric, K&K Electric, before we were What's Right, had never installed a generator, period, until we got with you guys. And so we've done, I think, $125,000, $130,000 in generator sales this year alone, and I've been the only one to sell generators. So we're still training on that. So that helped a lot. Also, something I don't think gets talked about a whole lot that I think that we do, that I don't know if some do or don't, but that's just generators. That's a generator transaction. We take a piece of the pie and was like, this much went to the generator, but there's a lot of the rest of the pie that was connected to that generator work that we got. Tracking that, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how much to contribute to that, but I am aware that, by having that niche also, it bleeds off into other areas, if that makes sense. So generators, having a sales process. Yeah.
So saying things like your maintenance agreements, your first class agreements, the customers that came after you sold the generator, the neighbors that were connected to it. I also know that you're definitely niched in on the portable installations.
Portables, yes. What I was kind of referring to is, there are a lot of companies in our area. Not a lot. I've seen some installations by multiple different companies in our area where, to the best of my knowledge, they never even took the panel cover off and hooked the generator up to it. Or if they, there were just, situations where, we look at everything. We look at the panel, we make sure of the electrical system. And so kind of what I was referring to is the panels that we've gotten to replace as a result, all the surge protectors that we've gotten to put in as a result, business that is accrued because of a generator, if that makes sense.
That does.
Yeah.
I appreciate you clarifying.
Massive. And what would your third big top three SOPs that you've leveraged or strategies that you've leveraged here in this last year?
So I think the last in the 6 options for sure. But here's the thing about that. I had a teacher to do those 6 options, because could you imagine trying to do 6 options without knowing how to do 6 options or what the framework is supposed to be or anything like that? Does that make sense? So having 6 options, knowing how to use 6 options, and understanding the ethicality behind 6 options that was all explained to me by Joseph is the third one for sure. Because I could have came up with 6 options. I never would have, but even if I could have, I would have confused people. I wouldn't have known at least marginally how to use them where I'm at today. So the third one would have to be 6 options, and Joseph teaching me those options. I got to give credit where it's due.
So I'm grateful to have been in your corner, man. And like I said, any knowledge that I possess, I'm happy to share with all of our students. But you've truly been a pleasure to work with. And knowing that you're taking the knowledge and doing something with it, it means a lot. Like, there are so many people who listen to these podcasts who may not take action, but it really, really makes me happy when someone's like, you know what? I heard you. I saw it. I did the thing, and here's the result.
Yeah.
So thank you for being a man of action.
Speaking of taking action, and we're in our final moments here too, but I have a feeling whatever gets said here about the future of your business and what you want is actually going to happen, Alan. What do you see for the future of What's Right? How big are you going for, brother?
Clay, I have to be honest, man. I really haven't given that much thought, and to be completely honest, I haven't. I think our market would bear a $5 to $7 million company. But again, what I've got is good enough, dude. It really is, man. Like I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Like, I'm the richest man that I know, and it doesn't have anything to do with money. It's I didn't intend to do 270 the first year. I didn't intend to do 1.23 last year. I didn't intend to do 1.7 this year. It was never my plan. I mean, we've had goals and we've kind of worked towards them, but we've just focused on getting better, serving the customers better, and ultimately building a culture. And I think that everything else will take care of itself. I know that maybe that wasn't the answer you were looking for, but we're going to try to do $2 million. We're going to try to do $2 million.
I actually like your first answer more. The reason being is that it showed that you focused on culture, you focused on doing the right thing, but it was also a place of gratitude. And I don't know if anyone else caught up with that, but gratitude means a lot to me. It's central to who we are. But the fact that you're like, you know what, I'm the richest man and it doesn't have to do with money, that says a lot about your character. Because, as a man of faith, you get it. When you feel like you've been blessed, is there any feeling better than that?
No.
Is there any amount of money you'd pay to change it or trade it? No. You've done the thing that people would say that someone in your situation couldn't have done. And then we know where the blessing came from, and I'm proud of you for getting there.
I appreciate that, man.
Very impressive. Alan, closing comments, man. I know that we could keep going. In fact, I'm sure we will again someday. We'd love to have you back and continue to work with you, of course. But do you have any closing comments for this 2023? If someone's in sort of maybe where you were, chucking a truck even, or in that next year of yours, or anywhere in between, going into 2024, like, what am I going to change? What am I going to do? What's your best advice that you would want to leave that person?
So the best advice is don't give up. You can't get anywhere if you don't give up. Find people who are smarter than you, put yourself in their vicinity, and be willing to try what it is that they're suggesting that you do. That is what got me here.
Huge. Anything else you wanted to say before we let you go, brother?
Yeah, just just thank you to you guys. You guys probably, you guys aren't going to mention it, but getting me to go from 3 options to 6 options, and some of the ups and some of the downs that we've experienced, that I've experienced, and the emotional volatility that's come along with selling and not selling, and struggling and learning and all those things. And you guys, you never backed away from me, man. You were always there in my corner. And you don't find that very often. And I know that it's not driven by money; it's driven by a desire to serve. And so I thank you guys for everything, man. For real, thank you.
Truly, the pleasure is ours. It truly was a pleasure, and is a pleasure to continue to coach you.
All right, Alan, we're going to see you out, brother. We'll chat with you in the back after as we wrap up the episode.
Thank you, man.
All right. Yeesh.
Oh, man.
Joe,
Always gets
okay,
in the field.
we went a bit longer today, but that was worth it, wasn't it?
Yeah. Alan's one of those guys that I feel like we could talk to all day, because there's such a depth to his story, but even beyond his story, his character is something that's almost like an enigma. You wonder, like, how did it happen? How did you get here? What was the secret sauce? And really, at the end of the day, Alan had a process that worked for him, that he was able to embrace, and he took it to the moon.
Yeah. I'm not a huge fan of like super happy story endings.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good thing this isn't the story ending. We're just at the, end of the first chapter here in 2023. But I've seen such a trend between our guests in these last few months. And what I see across all of them, man, is they're all leading with heart. And it's a perfect reflection of what we're doing here and trying to do for electricpreneurs everywhere. So guys, if you're watching this, thank you for joining us again. Thank you for continually showing up. Thank you for helping us reach over 40,000 downloads. I mean, clearly we're helping. We're doing everything we can to help. Thank you. This has been episode 225 of Electricpreneur Secrets in a single year, hitting sales records by doing what's right. And I think that was a perfect title for this interview that just happened, brother.
Amen to that. Really well done.
Tomorrow we're kicking off the holiday season. I cannot wait. If you guys want to join us, of course, everyone's invited. Tons of grace, just tons of, maybe a little Bailey's in the cup for myself, and saying some happy holidays gestures. Joe, have a great rest of your day, man. We're going to talk to you all soon.
Cheers to you, brother. Nothing but love.